In this video I'm going to be sharing quite a few links and covering quite a few topics. If you look at my YouTube account, you'll see in my statement that what I do is research, share information and connect dots in order to present the bigger picture of what is going on. Not to fearmonger people, but to actually empower people, because knowledge is power. And it is through understanding the true nature of the problems that we're facing that we can actually resolve those problems. If we don't understand the true nature of the problems, we are not going to successfully address the problems, and anything that we are persuaded to do by the people that are obfuscating information, that rely on confusion, we are easily going to be persuaded to operate according to their dictates, because they're going to present problems that really are insignificant compared to the problems that we are facing through the people that are trying to persuade us to follow their dictates as intelligence. And these people are not intelligent, and that's the danger of it. You see, they're not intelligent. They're not just a danger to us, they're a danger to themselves and their own children. So, you know, the information I'm sharing, even though they would consider me an enemy and perhaps even label me as a non-violent terrorist, is actually for their advantage as well, at least for the children. So, how do you persuade a population that's going through austerity? Okay, so let's just look at Britain. Going through austerity, it's directly linked to 120,000 deaths, directly to austerity. Now, can you imagine if, say, David Cameron, when he was first standing for election, had said to the British people, I'm sorry people, but, you know, we're going to, 120,000 of you are going to have to die because we're going to implement austerity. So, we're going to have to kill 120,000 people. Would that population have voted for them? And don't forget, this is the official figure, so you're probably looking at double that or more. Would the population have voted for that? No, they wouldn't, you see. But how do you persuade a population to vote then? How do you persuade a population who's going through this level of austerity that's murdered 120,000 people through economic terrorism under the label austerity? How do you do it? How do you persuade them to vote at that point when everybody's struggling? People are living paycheck to paycheck. How do you persuade them to vote, to leave the market that's on their doorstep, that was providing them with healthy, safe food in abundance at a really cheap, affordable rate, and an abundance of medicines at a cheap, affordable rate? And instead, to abandon all of that in order to put ourselves at the mercy of a nation like America, governed by these far-right extremists, or if not them, just extremists, okay, left. And you couldn't even call them left extremists, because you're talking about centre-right or far-right. That's American politics. That's what governs America. It's either the Tories or the extremists. Basically, the equivalent of UKIP or the EDL is Trump. So we put ourselves at the mercy of America in order to pay 4 times more when you include world trade tariffs. 4 times more for food that is actually unhealthy and unsafe and banned in the EU. And to pay extortionate amounts for our medicines. Because, you know, go and have a look at America. People are dying. Diabetics are dying because they're skipping insulin injections because they can't afford the insulin. An inhaler costs $150. And even in return for that deal, because it's such a fantastic deal for us, isn't it? Paying 4 times more for unsafe, unhealthy food and extortionate amounts for our medicines, that in return for that wonderful deal, also we will allow American healthcare corporations to profit off our NHS. That's part of the deal. Now, what nation can be persuaded to do that? Apparently, educated, intelligent people, civilised, apparently, people who love their children. How do you persuade them to do that? Well, you employ a psyop engineering, social engineering firm like Cambridge Analytica, don't you? A global corporation that has connections, is itself a subsidiary of global corporate militaries and global corporate intelligence. People were worried about the EU army. Nobody's worried about the global corporate armies that are fully equipped and militarised and available for hire for any government or corporation that's prepared to pay them, in order that they will provide stability for that governing authority, which, as we know today, is the SS, supreme supremacists, that have judged themselves the superior beings among humans, and the rest of us are inferior, we're cattle, we're dead. That's the foundation of their corporate law. This isn't, like I say, this isn't a conspiracy theory, this is fact. These are conspiracy facts. Corporate law. They appropriate the narratives and control them through their media, their corporately controlled medias, and even alternative medias that they covertly operate through on the internet, like for example the Alex Jones of this world, that put forward and promote skew-whiff ideologies, a warped perspective, and sell that to the people and actually feed on people's fears, feed on stuff like racism, promote issues like abortion. Apparently it is murder, but it isn't murder. It isn't murder to impose austerity on a nation that kills 120,000 people. That isn't murder. The murderers are the women that are refusing to bring children into abject poverty, for example. So that's how you get people. That is why they employ these people, because we're taught people need to wake up to get aware of the amount of social engineering that is going on, the manipulation, the brainwashing, the taking control of the narratives. Because you see, the general narrative is that anybody who is demanding social housing, a universal health service, free education system, a living wage, apparently they're all Soviet communists, because the socialists, that's what socialism is. You can't differentiate between socialism and Soviet communism, actually. Okay? And these corporations that are standing against, oppressing the social, they are anti-social, aren't they? They are anti-socialists. You see, they're calling themselves capitalists. They're calling themselves capitalists who are there to save the world from this threat of Soviet communism. But actually, no, because in reality, these corporations are not capitalist at all. They are completely Soviet communist, because they are monopolists, and they have systematically crushed, swallowed up, broken down, decimated the vast majority of independent owned businesses and factories operating in every nation. They have systematically taken over them. Just as with Soviet communism, under corporate communism, the most businesses that you will see, private businesses operating, are little home-run businesses, people selling their individual services or selling their work, their crafts, their creations. The vast majority of services have been taken over by global corporate entities and their corporate subsidiaries. Like even, for example, stuff like dentists in Britain are now largely corporatised. law firms being corporatised, owned by global corporations. They even want to take over our police force in Britain so that a government can hire a private corporate police force, or a corporation can hire them. This is what is going on. So, also they call themselves a patriarchy, commonly considered a patriarchy. They're not a patriarchy, they're an oligarchy. So what we're dealing with is the equivalent of Soviet communism in the form of a global corporations that's owned by a handful of people. All the corporations, the vast majority of them, are subsidiaries of a handful of huge corporations that are directly created, owned and controlled by the banks. The banks that have collapsed, that have behaved recklessly and criminally, to the extent that then, instead of them paying the price for that, they come to the populations of Earth demanding that we bail them out, that our governments borrow huge sums from the World Bank in order to bail these corporations, corporate bankers out, to give them even more money and even bonuses. And interest-free loans for them. But we're paying, in Britain, 50 million a week. 50 million a week. Just on the interest. Just paying the interest off those bailout loans. But we were being persuaded in Britain, and this is why Britain's accepted it, that actually, no, it isn't the global corporations and their criminal bankers that are causing austerity, that's causing economic misery in Britain. It's benefit claimants, it's the sick and disabled, it's impoverished immigrants arriving in the country. They're the ones that were draining us. You see? These are the things that they do. These are the things that they get people straining at a gnat in order to swallow a camel. That's the kind of things that social engineering is designed to do. People think, for example, advertising doesn't achieve anything. I tell you, if it didn't achieve anything, these corporations wouldn't be spending billions every year, trillions, on advertising their produce. They employed armies, literally online armies of internet trolls in order to come across as individual people expressing their individual concerns, in order to persuade people to stab themselves in the foot. Because, as I've always said, if Britain wanted to leave the EU, that's fine. But make sure that you're self-sufficient and independent enough to do it, not in order to leap out of the frying pan into the fire. And really, is the EU market a frying pan? Okay? So, now I'm going to show you exactly how these corporations and their corporate media manipulate. I'm going to give an example. Now, I could be wrong here, but I very strongly suspect that this is what is going on with this video here of Donald Trump, okay, who this has been shown by Farron Cousins' Ring of Fire. Deranged, Trump says windmills are killing all the bald eagles. Okay, so I'm just going to play you this little clip, and then I'm going to explain to you exactly what's going on.
The Green New Deal, everybody go home, you just lost your jobs. The Green New Deal that's a hoax like the hoax I just went through. I'm not even sure, it might be a bigger one, and mine was pretty big. Mine was unlimited. Think of it, the Green New Deal, under that deal, I didn't have this isn't down. But John Kennedy, Bill, under that deal, everybody in this room gets fired. All of the thousands of guys and women standing on these buildings get fired, they go home. Because under the Green New Deal, they don't like clean, beautiful natural gas. They don't like anything. They don't know what they like. They sort of like wind, even though it kills all the birds. You want to see a bird cemetery? Go under a windmill sometime. You'll see the saddest. You got every type of bird. In California, you go to jail for 5 years if you kill a bald eagle. You go under a windmill, you see them all over the place.
So the media have gone to town on this. And, you know, because he said that also these windmills cause cancer. I mean, I'm not particularly promoting windmills, okay? But when you look at the amount of birds that they're alleged to kill compared to the amount of birds that die through flying into glass-fronted buildings as the type he builds, then, you know, a lot more birds end up dead and injured through the glass-fronted buildings than they do through wind turbines, okay? And also, there's absolutely no evidence whatsoever to support his suggestion that they also cause cancer. And Trump as a whole, he's the joker. The SS, as I call them, the supreme supremacists, who are the New World Order, who do control the banking system and all the global corporations that are vamping off every nation at the moment, and imposing corporate communism on us through their anti-capitalist, anti-socialist policies that is actually communist, because we're dealing, instead of a state controlling all the industry, they are controlling everything, aren't they? And they don't like independent businesses, because independent businesses will threaten their profits and their control. And that's why there are very few independent big businesses right now. Most of them have been gobbled up by global corporations. So he's the joker. He's the joker. He's being praised to the hilt by people like Netanyahu. Only you could do it, Donald Trump. God bless you for bearing the shame and the ridicule, for standing there and rolling out, persuading the populace of cattle to accept our dictates as if it was their own choice. As if they've chosen to do this, and even duped into believing that in choosing things like Brexit, in choosing to elect a far-right extremist like Donald Trump, that actually they have liberated themselves from the threat of socialism. When actually the people who are being considered a threat as socialists aren't anywhere near corporate communism, okay, or Soviet communism. They are actually socio-capitalists, because that's what was established in Britain, wasn't it? After the war, the people of Britain were not anti-capitalists, but we were also pro-socialist. So we had a socio-capitalist society. We did not ban independent businesses. We didn't ban capitalism. We worked alongside with it. We said capitalism and socialism need to work together so that, yes, we're allowed to profit and make a profit and have our own independent businesses, but we're also going to operate in a society in which people have their social needs met as well, because we are a social species with social needs for healthcare, housing, a living wage, a decent standard of living, education. It is reasonable. That's balance. But no, these corporate communists want it all. The SS want it all. The corporate, because they're monopolists. So as monopolists, they're anti-capitalist and they're anti-independent capitalist and they're anti-socialist. The people like, for example, Bernie Sanders, the people of post-World War II developed in Britain, we were a socio-capitalist society. What Venezuela has set up is a socio-capitalist society. Again, Britain now on the verge of becoming dependent on America for our food and medicines. We cannot ignore the fact that America is a nation that issues medieval-style sanctions, a siege, on a nation that votes for a leader that America doesn't like. And in Venezuela's case, the people have voted for a socio-capitalist leader who supports both socialism and independent capitalism, as opposed to corporate monopolism that will impose corporate communism on the people and rob them of their resources and their rights, because it's not just resources, it's rights as well. So he's their joker, knowing full well the world's going to ridicule him, but he'll get on and do it anyway. He'll laugh all the way to the bank because he had a choice. Because of his huge business failures, it was like, look, Donald Trump, it's either up or down. Which way are you going to go? Are you going to go up or are you going to go down? If you want to go up, you'll be president. You'll obey everything we ask of you. You will give us Jerusalem. You'll give us the Golan Heights. You'll do everything. You'll satisfy all the corporate wishes, the wishes of the SS. You will promote them. You will be a huge, big propaganda mouthpiece, and you will captivate millions with your far-right extremism and the freedom to commit crimes against people with impunity because they're gay, because they're a Jew, because they're black. Just as the SS presently controlling Israel give themselves rights to murder Palestinians and maim them and steal from them. Because they can do that because they're Palestinians and they're an inferior species. Palestinians are inferior, they don't have human rights, and anyone who says that they do is anti-Semitic. You see, this is the kind of rhetoric that is going around the world right now. And what Donald Trump has done very kindly here, because he knows he's talking crap, but what he's done is he's laid the foundation there now for all the global media, the corporately controlled media, and even their controlled opposition media among the what's called the alternative media, online alternative media. He's laid the groundwork there because Donald Trump has also endorsed now the rollout of hundreds and hundreds of 5G posts throughout America. The global corporations, corporate communists, the monopolists, because they're not capitalists and they're not socialists, they are monopolists who do wish to control everything and everyone. They are collectively hoping now to profit vastly in information and finance through rolling out this 5G, which we have 28,000 studies telling us how dangerous it is, not just for our health, but for plants and creatures like birds and insects, bees, all at risk from this technology that will be able to spy on us in our homes, literally know the contents of our fridge. That these global corporations will have access to all the knowledge, all the information that they're achieving online through their smart meters, through their 5G. And what's going to happen now, I tell you, he's come out and said that as people get more and more aware and they start complaining about it, they're going to be chopped down by the mainstream media as Trumpists. They're going to be ridiculed and laughed at. They're going to be compared to Trump. People standing against new technology saying it kills birds and it causes cancer. Ha 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 ha. We've heard it all before off Trump. They're all mad, these people. This is how they do it. This is how they do it. But, like I say, there are no studies to support anything that Trump says, but we have 28,000 studies to support what we are saying. And even if, the corporations want to nitpick and say, oh, well, that study wasn't done perfectly and this study had this wrong with it, even if only a few thousand of those studies are found to be absolutely, yes, spot on, we have to accept the fact that 5G is dangerous. It's an existential threat. And why are they doing it? Why is it in every country? How is it that these banks, apparently the world's bankrupt. We've got no money. We've got no money to deal with Fukushima. Corporate exercise, corporate experiment, nuclear power. In Japan, 3 ongoing nuclear melt-throughs. We know at least one fuel pool blew up and also a reactor because there's been pieces of mox plutonium found a mile away from the Daiichi Fukushima plant. that scientists have confirmed came directly from a reactor, not from a fuel pool. They've been lying to us about the severity of it. It's destroying the Pacific Ocean. It's terribly impacted the people and life of Japan. But there's no money. There's no money. They're struggling for funds. They've left it all to TEPCO. Inept, criminally negligent TEPCO. A global banking corporate entity. And the Japanese government that is fully controlled by that same corporate entity. To deal with it. One of the ways they've dealt with it is by raising the levels of radiation that people can now allegedly safely absorb. But they've got no money for dealing with that. But they have got trillions to spend on creating and rolling out this 5G. Does it make any sense? Does it make any sense, really, other than giving them even more control over us? And the fact it can be weaponised for things like crowd control, that it's spying on us. As I've said before, even if you're prepared to dismiss all the serious health risks against us and the life of our planet, you cannot dismiss the fact that they will know the contents of your fridge. They will be able to spy on you in your home. They will literally, through 5G, be able to follow you from your house to wherever you go to the bus stop. Through their digital imaging. That it's a risk, a threat against our children. That we're talking about absolute control, whereby they could, at the flick of a button, switch the power off of a whole community. These are very, very serious times. And as I say, this is part of the PSYOP. This is part of the social engineering. He is one of the key components of it, sitting at the White House. Huge, big mouthpiece. Apparently, the people who voted for him think they're being anti-establishment. But they're not. They're not being anti-establishment. They're absolutely pro-establishment. They're duped. So, how do we address it? Well, as I've always said, repeatedly, you start with the little things in life, the children. You stand up for your children's rights. Everybody, everywhere that does it, that will stand up and refuse to accept the legal definition of our children as a minor human being. That's where everything will change. Because, as I've said, no longer will they be able to bomb places or impose austerity on people or implement this policy, roll out stuff that like 5G that does affect the unborn even. Because children will no longer be a minor concern. They will be a major concern. We need to turn the minor into major and the majors into minors. He is a minor. He's a minority. He is a minor intellect. People have compared him to a toddler. Oh, he is a toddler. No, he isn't a toddler. He's a monster. Because a toddler brain in an adult body that has such powers as the President of the United States is a monster. Because a toddler has no understanding, has no true experience, is not aware fully of reality. He's a danger to himself and others if you leave that toddler on their own with a box of matches. So, this is why I make my videos. It isn't to fearmonger. There is something to be afraid of. Yes, we need to be afraid of what's going on in our world right now with this corporate takeover. Why do you think the yellow vests are there in France? Fundamentally, their cause is the issue of the corporate takeover of their country. They're not campaigning for Frexit. They're not campaigning against immigrants. They are challenging the corporate takeover of their nation that is driving down their living standards, that is denying them of adequate health care, that's taken over everything. And so we need that yellow vest movement everywhere, don't we? But as I say, the key feature of any change on our planet is going to need to be those who stand up for their children's rights. And the one thing we need to do is to remove this label minor off our children. Remove that legal definition minor. Our children are not a minor concern. They are a very important concern. They are a major concern. And the concern for the safety and welfare of children needs to be a priority for any government calling itself civilised and sane on this planet, that they will need to take into account the children. It's the only way forwards. And this 5G stuff, you're going to have to write to your MP, you're going to have to get active in your community, you're going to have to stand up and say no to this rollout. And no, actually, we're not being like Donald Trump, deranged, falsely issuing false statements about new technology because we're all Luddites. No, what we need to understand is that we are aware, we are informed, we are alert, we are compassionate, caring people who actually understand the need to rise up and establish a future worth living for our children. Otherwise, what are we leaving our children? What are we leaving them? Misery and debt that isn't even theirs. We're bringing children into this world in order to dump a huge debt on them that then they're going to have to pay, and meanwhile live in this type of environment, bathing in radio frequencies, and never mind the radiation, magnetic frequencies, and never mind the radiation also leaking out of Fukushima. We're going to condemn them to austerity forever, because that's what the Tory government have said. Austerity is to be permanent. We've got Jeremy Corbyn standing for election, who really is a wishy-washy compared to what needs to be done. But, he's offering teenager workers between the ages of 16 and 20, he's offering them £10 an hour. Apparently that's a bribe. It's described as bribing them, bribing the electorate. It's like, are you crazy? Are you crazy? It is a bribe that's been going on. This 5G, they've got millions, trillions to spend on giving councillors, backhanders and government ministers. They own our government ministers who are supporting its rollout. We're literally talking 1984 level control. They'll be controlling our housing. Already the global corporations, they're buying up our housing. They've bought our water supplies. They own our gas, our electricity, our social services, our benefit systems, our health systems, even our education systems, all earning profits for the global corporations. And they are dictating their rules upon us, forcing people to sign 0-hour contracts, forcing people to tolerate this kind of stuff, and playing their prime card now, the Joker, in order to further their psyop agendas. These are not the times for sitting on the fence. I stand for humanity, I stand for children's rights, and in that sense, even the people who call me their enemy, if they understood reality, if they were truly connected to it, they would understand that I am standing up as much for their rights as for the people who are supporting socialism, a socio-capitalist society. But understand that what we're dealing with, what is standing against us, is Corporate-Communists. That's what's standing against us. Monopolists, anti-capitalists, anti-socialists, anti-humanitarians. People who consider themselves supremacists, supremists. They are the supreme supremacists. And they thrive on war, fear, fear. They profit off it. They profit from division. They profit from confusion. So that's why I've taken time out today to connect these dots, to try and help people understand, look, we are being played here. We're being played. Understand. And as I say, I could be wrong, but I tell you now that when this really hots up now, the public really starts speaking out against this 5G. No, we don't want 5G. They are going to start comparing us to Donald Trump. They are going to use exactly his rhetoric to ridicule us. Because that is how they operate. That is how they operate. And, you know, it's hard, isn't it? That you believe somebody, you put your faith in somebody and you wake up and you find, oh my gosh, I've been robbed. That's how they rob people. Conning them, feeding on fears, lying to people, putting children at risk. All our children are at risk. All our children are at risk. And this isn't going to end until we, the people, stand up for our human rights, and we stand up for our children's rights. And we will never have strength and courage to do that until we are absolutely sure that, look, we have the knowledge, we have the information, we have the facts. Stick by the facts and the information. Have faith in what you know, and not in what you've been told to believe.